When I was 14, there was this kid that came over to the house and told me that Dave Grohl was the best drummer in the world. And me, being the prog rock snob that I was at the time, I basically told him to f*** off. Well, after 20 years as a session drummer, I can now tell you for certain that I was wrong. And he was right. Dave Grohl is an amazing drummer. So in this video, I'll show you the techniques Dave uses that makes his playing so incredible, how you can steal them to play with more speed, pocket, and raw power. And I'll show you how you can take those boring fills from Dave Droll to Dave Grohl in just 30 minutes. Everything will be broken down with notation and diagrams to make things quick and easy to learn. This is possibly Dave's most iconic ever, but if I'm missing another one, then let me know. It can be heard, of course, on Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana. Now, Dave has the most insane power in his flams I may have ever heard in my life. That's something you really want to work on. You don't need to hit super strong and forceful into the drum. In fact, it really helps to have this whipping motion, this molar whipping motion. So I would encourage you to do that because you can get insane volume with very little effort, but also focus on the width of your flams. So we need volume, and I really suggest the whipping motion, because if you play like this, you're gonna kill your hands and your arm. They're gonna fall off. It's a lot of tension, and it's just not good for you. But if you have this whip to what you're doing, that whip is gonna give you so much power with so little effort, it's not even funny. So then the fill becomes something like this. I'll just leave the hi-hat out for a second. All I gotta do after that is add the hi-hat, and you're good with the opening fill. There's another little secret sauce to his flams that we're going to get to in a minute. But first, you also need to work on the beat itself. And the kick technique to get this easy is very important. We're going to work on something called slide technique. What that involves is placing your foot a little bit further back down the pedal, starting there, and then you kind of push forward with your foot. You kind of slide up the pedal for the second stroke. It makes it very easy, very effortless to get those two notes in a row and get them quick. And you're going to need that for this beat like this. And what we're doing is it's a little bit of a miniaturized version of a molar. We're going down and up like this. And it works great for like rock beats and open hi-hats. But I'm going to show you closed first. We go down, kind of catch it on the way up like that. It's important for a lot of reasons. One is it's so much easier to play. You're not playing constant notes like that. It feels like you're doing this. The second reason is it gives some actual ebb and flow to the dynamics of the hi-hat. It gives it a real pulse and groove. So it's more alive than being really static. It sounds like this closed. And when you're playing up the tempo, the in-between note kind of becomes a little subtle, but it's still there and it makes a big difference. Here's without it. And here's with it. Big difference, right? So what I want you to do is practice all those movements together. You're going to go down and up on the hi-hat. You're going to play with a whipping motion for the snare hits, whether it's the flams and the fill, or it's the backbeat during the beat. And you're going to get the slide technique with your foot for the doubles in this groove. Here it is, nice and slow. Oh, and one more thing about that opening fill.
If you listen to Nevermind, the Nirvana record, I pulled so much stuff from the Gap Band and Cameo and Tony Thompson on every one of those songs. All that. That's wow. It's old disco. That's all it is.
But Dave didn't just drum for Nirvana, and when he played drums on the Queens of the Stone Age album Songs for the Deaf, he busted out this foot killer on the track First It Giveth. Now, it sounds deceptively simple, but there are a lot of details to master if you want to play this beat as well as Dave does. So I've broken down the first thing you want to practice, which is this kick workout. Now, of course, we're using the slide technique for the doubles. So this is a lot of slide technique practice, but you have to really pay attention to get it lined up with your right hand. And it looks a little something like this. I'm going to isolate that same exercise and I'm going to leave the snare out of it. So check this out. Getting this clean so the ride and kick drum are in unison is the most essential thing you can practice to master this groove. So this is good so far. You've got the technique, but how do you get it up to speed? Well, you need to practice the full beat with the slide technique at these tempos. Check it out. By the way, notation and exercises for everything in this video are free, link in the description. Okay, this is all good so far, but what if you want to play this song without your hands falling off? This is Everlong off of the Foo Fighters album, The Color and the Shape, and the first thing you need to do to master this is work on your single stroke endurance. We're busting out the pad for this one. If you're gonna work on your single endurance, there's a couple key things to keep in mind. One, you have to develop your muscles. You're not gonna get it overnight. This takes a couple of weeks. Two, to do that, work with more resistance and less rebound. So I'm gonna flip this pad to the softer, less bouncy side. Pillows work great. If you want to drum on some pillows, I highly suggest you do that. But three, and this is the most essential thing, you're going to be getting this workout. You're going to feel the burn as in muscle development, but you need to really make sure that you're not tense with your hands. So you have to be very loose with how your hands feel, how you grip the stick. So I'm playing with the gap here. My fingers are all on the stick so that I'm not losing control, because if I lose control, my back fingers aren't on the stick, it starts getting a little wiggly, and then I got to tense up, and that's just a recipe for disaster and carpal tunnel. You don't want that. So instead, get the back fingers to close without rebound, because we're playing on a pillow or small amounts of rebound. Keep the fingers on the stick, closing the stick against the palm. You are not squeezing tight. Don't squeeze tight. Keep it loose, but it is closed, and then keep the gap with your fingers. You've heard me talk about that like a lot of times. Once you're there, literally just do your singles at a moderate velocity and stick height, at a moderate tempo, and start putting the reps in. If you have some heavier sticks, I do recommend that. I don't have those with me. The next thing you need to think about is lining up your right hand with your foot while you're playing that beat. So we're actually going to isolate, take out the singles from the equation, and play just the right hand and the foot, like this. Then you're going to fill in with your left hand, get those singles even. And it's a funny thing, because to really get this to feel nice and natural, we want a little of that down up motion like we talked about before. The left is going to ghost in between. But then we get to the fills, where you really want to make sure your single strokes are even again, and just get some strong singles out of that. Something like this. Now, what is Dave's best drum performance on record? Well, this next song is up there, but I'm saving my favorite for last. Let me know your favorites in the comments, and let me know if I've missed any in this video, and if you want to see more breakdowns like this. My Hero is absolutely iconic at this point, and it's often actually played incorrectly. It's actually pretty common to think the kick drum is played throughout the beat, but I did some research to find how Taylor Hawkins plays this live, and the kick drums are broken up, which makes this way easier to play, like this. Now, if you want to, you can even get that slide technique into the double kicks, because we're breaking them up and there's several groups of two. You have to play some longer sequences of repeated kicks, but when there's just the two, you get to relax a little more, rest a little bit more with that slide technique. This next Foo Fighters song has some of the most insane right-hand technique I've heard on a rock album, and it's actually from their most recent album, But Here We Are. Now, it might not be played live this way or in the studio this way, but I'm going to teach it to you with the open-close technique. It looks like this. So the open-close technique is a hybrid technique where I'm using wrist strokes and then I close my fingers and get finger strokes. I'm dividing the work between both of those muscle groups so that it's extra efficient and I don't have to do all the work with just my wrist or just my fingers. I tire out way less and I can get very even, repeated, fast notes that way. It's great for playing on the rider hi-hat like this. And by the way, the Technique Fundamentals Guide for you to master the basics is free, link in the description. So you're going to add that technique to the full beat like this. We're going to play it slow and then speed it up. Check it out. Now, I was almost going to include In Bloom by Nirvana, but I'm skipping it because I learned the drum parts were actually written by Chad Channing before Dave Grohl took over the drum chair. But you tell me if you think that's the right move or not. And that brings us to what I think is Dave Grohl's best drum performance and absolutely my favorite of all time. In the intro, I said I'd teach you how to take your boring fills from Dave Droll to Dave Grohl, and this is the part where I show you how. This is Song for the Dead by Queens of the Stone Age, and there's a lot to unpack here to get your fills more exciting, so we're going to isolate different parts of this intro and turn them into exercises for you to master them. Starting with this right here. Next, I've got some foot independence exercises for you. It's going to let you phrase your kick drum in these badass ways that Dave uses. Check it out. Dave finishes off this sick drum intro with a fantastic snare fill. We're talking hurtas and rests and then space, and then it goes crazy, right? So I've created some custom exercises for you to work on your hurtas that'll help you nail this fill at the end of the intro. Song for the Dead might be Dave's best drum performance of all time, but what happens when you combine Dave's brilliant drum parts with the best studio and punk drummer alive?
Excuse me! Guys, could we just I don't know, play a song?
Well, you get the new drummer of the Foo Fighters, and in this video, I'll break down what you need to take from him to take your drumming to the next level.